So I've heard that Haas and most of the avocados are alternate bearing. Is there any way to prevent that, or uh, can it be mitigated?
Oh, that's like the age-old question. It's hard.
Okay.
There's definitely things you can do to minimize it. So nutrition is number one. So instead of having, say, a 70% difference from year to year, you could bring nutrition down to sort of have that sort of level.
Yeah.
But there always seems to be some level of alternate bearing occurring, just due to how the carbohydrates accumulate in the tree and the roots and the length of time it takes and the competition.
Yeah.
But you can definitely reduce it and minimize it through nutrition. You can pruning. Pruning is probably the other big one. So not letting your trees. It's when your trees get out of balance, so their tops are too big for the roots. They can't keep up. So that's usually, you need to sort of be a year ahead in pruning to avoid alternate bearing. And there's like this, what we call the honeymoon stage, where it's sort of year 7, year 8, where the trees, they just can't do anything wrong until then. They just get yielding, and avocados are fantastic. And then all of a sudden they get to that point where there's not much light left, and that's when the alternate bearing comes in. And so you need to be pruning a year before, or even a couple of years before that, to avoid that big slump. And then once you get 1 year of alternate bearing, it's very hard to get back on track unless you do some big canopy management renewal, which usually then takes out yield and puts you back into that cycle again. So, and then environmental conditions. So, especially down in Victoria and Australia, where we have very harsh weather over flowering, we might get 3 pollination events down there in a flowering period, and a flowering period probably goes for 8 weeks. There's only 3 times there where everything lines up, and if you get then 40 degrees 2 days later in sort of September, October, when the flowers have just set and you've got match head fruit, they all drop off out of stress. There's not much you can have your misters going 24 hours a day, and it's just too much stress for something so little. So those sort of environmental impacts can definitely upset or create some of that alternate bearing patterns. But you can get out of it. It just takes a lot of, you've got to be pretty tough to go in and just chop your trees back so they're more balanced, and feed them well and water them well. But there'll always be some element there. And I think the limit is like 3 years. So you can kind of go 3 years fairly consistent, and then the 4th year, for some reason, just we've had a few where it's just sort of averaging that 15 to 20 tonne a hectare, 15 to 20 tonne, 15 to 20, and then drops down to maybe 12s or 15s, and then you can get it back up again. But yeah.